any VR system or 3D TV or any of these kinds of systems use stereoscopic display. Very simple idea. You give your left eye one image, you give your right eye a slightly different image that are slightly offset, and your brain kind of muddles out a 3D image from the two offset images.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Milne.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where reality is now optional. Meetings are rendered in 8K, and even your to-do list has shadow and mood lighting. I'm your host, Jeff Milne. Help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. What if the future of interacting with AI wasn't on screen, but floating, responsive, and right in front of you? In this episode, we explore the mind-bending convergence of holography and artificial intelligence, and how it's set to radically change the way we engage with technology. From immersive entertainment to next-gen automotive displays, holograms are moving out of sci-fi and into our everyday lives, and the impact can be enormous. You'll hear how holographic displays are creating dynamic, interactive environments where virtual characters can adapt to your presence, your actions, and even your voice. We'll dive into the tech's commercial potential, not just by launching consumer gadgets, but by licensing the core platform to existing businesses, making adoption faster and more scalable. From in-vehicle augmented reality to large-scale public displays designed to capture imaginations and investor attention. This conversation showcases what's possible when intelligent interfaces meet immersive environments. And maybe most powerfully, it offers a glimpse into how the next interface revolution may be less about tapping and swiping and more about presence, perception, and participation. If you're ready to step into a future where your technology doesn't just respond, it surrounds, you're going to want to hear this. Let's dive in. Our expert guest last Thursday was Mark Osborne, founder of Modern Revenue Strategies and a true architect of revenue systems. In his episode, Mark shared how most B2B companies don't actually have go-to-market fit, and why fixing that starts with understanding the difference between storytelling and selling. Very cool stuff. He broke down how to align marketing, sales, and customer success into one unified revenue engine, why consistency builds trust, and how microscripts can be the secret to unlocking conversions at scale. If you don't know what microscripts are, check out this episode. His frameworks weren't just fluff. They were actionable, repeatable, and rooted in real growth outcomes. And our founder last week was Amos Bar-Joseph, CEO of Swan. Amos brought us inside the world of autonomous business. With only 3 founders and a swarm of internal agents, Swan is rewriting the startup playbook, scaling to 10 million ARR per employee without a traditional team. Amos walked us through how AI powers every corner of their go-to-market solution, how internal experimentation replaces rigid processes, and what it looks like to build with an AI-first operating system, not just sprinkle on automation here and there. For anyone serious about integrating AI deep into their operations, Amos delivered a masterclass. If you missed either one of those episodes, go back and check them out. Lots of great stuff in there. My guest today is Darren Milne, co-founder and CEO of VividQ, the company pioneering the future of holographic display technology. With a background as a theoretical physicist and a PhD in quantum information theory and quantum optics, the dude is smart. Darren brings a rare blend of scientific depth and commercial execution to the table. Under his leadership, VividQ has emerged as the global leader in real-time holography, developing systems that merge the digital and physical worlds in a way that feels like science fiction, but it's actually real. From next-gen automotive HUDs to immersive entertainment and wearables, Darren's vision goes far beyond pixels. He's reimagining the very interfaces we use to see, work, and play. Through light fields and wavefront shaping that create true 3D experiences without the barrier of headsets and glasses. Welcome someone who's not just seeing the future, but literally building it in light, Darren Milne. Hey, Darren, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You transitioned from the halls of academia to the fast-moving world of tech entrepreneurship. In making the leap, what's been the biggest mindset shift in moving from theory to commercialization?
Great question. So I guess the hardest thing or the biggest thing was how do you adapt yourself to the new ethos, right? Especially in academia, you get into this kind of mindset of like academia is kind of all consuming, and you think you're doing like the most important thing because you're literally opening up how the universe works and trying to figure out how things work at the smallest possible level or the grandest possible scale. And academia is quite bad, I think, for kind of implying that business kind of things are lesser pursuits, and somehow that they're the pursuit of profit and these things are not as important as the pursuit of knowledge. But sometimes, quite often actually, you find that in the pursuit of knowledge, you need quite a lot more money. And academic funding is not always good enough to cover that. And it turns out the way to get the money is to go into business and create things that people want, that people want to buy. And you have to go through this kind of shift of consider yourself to be a kind of academic, a scientist, and I think everybody that comes from this reaches a moment where they have to make a decision. Am I going to continue being the academic and then maybe I settle as like CTO or chief science officer, head of research within a company, or do you go full business guy and become the CEO or the CO or whatever the business function is? And I struggled with this for like maybe a year, like just trying to basically be both, trying to keep one foot in the research where I was actively reading papers and writing code and doing things with the technical team, but also trying to raise money, talk to customers, sell things, and create business plans and all these kinds of things. And I'm afraid it's just not really possible. At some point, you have to make a hard choice. And for me, well, I don't know. I guess it was made for me. My technical team was way more talented than me, so it seemed I was the logical person to sacrifice on the business side. And so now I'm business guy. But occasionally I get to talk about the tech, and I get to do some little science presentations on stages and investor pitches. So that keeps me happy.
Well, I mean, your background, quantum optics, and I think in a lot of ways, at least on the surface, that's about as far away from SaaS as it could be.
Yeah.
But you've taken that knowledge and your time in academia and actually turned it into something commercial, holographic displays. But it's way more than just building screens. I mean, you're reshaping how we see the world. What was the moment that you realized that this could actually work?
Yeah, no, so this was actually a bit of a defining moment, I guess, in my life, or it turned out to be. I didn't think it was so momentous at the time, but I was working in a lab in Cambridge, the university, and I was a theorist attached to an experimental group that was doing optical things. And as I said, I did quantum optics and quantum information. I was a hardcore theorist. I was a bit of a snob, frankly, about experimental physics. We did all the highbrow theoretical stuff, which is all in the mind and it's all maths. Whereas I didn't get involved in going into the lab and playing with things and twiddling knobs and setting up optical apparatus. That was an experimental problem. But I found myself working with this experimental group, looking at some theoretical problems for them. And at some point, these guys tempted me into their lab to say, we have this really cool thing. You theorists, you never see the actual results of the stuff you write down. How would you like to see something cool? And I was like, yes, fine. Yeah. I have a spare hour. So they take me in the lab, not my natural environment. I always break out in a cold sweat as soon as I enter one of these places. But they showed me what was a genuine holographic display, and I don't mean holographic display in the sense that people have seen the world today, where you have to wear glasses or there's a bit of glass in between you and the image, or some of these things, right? I mean, the thing you imagine from Star Wars, like there's a display panel and floating above it, there's a 3-dimensional image which you can put your hand into. You could in principle grab it and move it around, but this was a hologram like I saw in the movies, and it was tiny. It was maybe 4 or 5 millimeters across. It was red. The image quality was awful, but it did that thing that I've seen in movies since I was a kid, and I thought, wow, I did not know we could actually do this. Like, I didn't know we
That's
could
cool.
physically do this. And of course, I turned to them. I was like, guys, that's a real hologram, not like the nonsense you see marketed as holograms today. And they were like,
Right.
yeah, we've been able to do this for 10 years or so. And I was like, what? How is this not a thing?
Wow.
How is this not like, why is my phone or my TV holographic? Why don't I see this everywhere around? And they explained to me, well, the problem is, it's small, it's grainy, it's single color. In order to make the projection larger in high quality and more importantly interactive, so being able to calculate the hologram in real time, they told me was a hugely unsolved problem. So it was they'd been computing this terrible little hologram like overnight on a GPU cluster, and it had, so it was hours and hours
Wow.
worth of effort to calculate this one image. So the idea of having that as something that could be interactive, like a video sequence, even, was just beyond what we could currently do. And so that obviously grabbed me. I was like, well, this sounds like more of a maths problem now. Let's have a go. So a mathematician friend of mine and I had a big long meeting with one of the optical engineers. We whiteboarded this out. We came up with a sketch of an algorithm. We coded it up, and in 2 weeks, we had sped this up many, many thousands of times to the point where we
Wow.
could then. The first experiment was very simple. We set up an Xbox Kinect camera, so a very basic 3D camera at one end of the
Sure.
lab. We had one of our guys stand there and wave into it. But on the other end of the lab, there was the same holographic display, so still small, still grainy, but we had made it such that you could see him waving back at you as a 3D hologram at the other end of the lab. And
Wow.
that
2 weeks.
it was very rapid.
That's amazing.
It was one of those things, like I say, there's a fair degree of snobbery in academia at times, where theorists and experimentalists just won't come together necessarily to discuss their problems, but when they do, you get rapid results, right? And yeah, this was very quick, and it was at that point I was like, well, this is something quite meaningful. I think, with this breakthrough in the algorithms and the compute scaling, well, we could make this bigger, we can make this higher quality. This is something that could achieve that vision of the holograms everywhere world that you might have seen in like Minority Report or Blade Runner or Star Wars, Star Trek, right?
Sure.
That's what I had my mind on even at the time. And then the natural next question was, cool, okay, so we need to build better hardware, because the stuff that was just lying around the lab was never going to get to something approaching good quality. And of course that's when we ran into the money issue, because of course you can go apply for an academic grant and you might get $5, $10, $15,000 if you're lucky, and it'll take you 6 to 9 months, and you're up against an awful lot of other academic projects. Or you could spin it out as a business and go down that route and try to get private investors who share your vision. And it didn't take me long to arrive at the conclusion that the latter would yield faster results.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's really interesting. A lot of times the early stage, we'll say science-based companies, they often struggle to find commercial fit.
Yeah.
And so going out to the market, I mean, it's one thing to go out and say, hey, we made this hologram, we can make a guy wave back. But the question is always, okay, cool, how are you going to make money?
Yeah.
How did you cross over that barrier from cool research to real business and just blow investors' minds? They went, this is amazing.
Yeah. Well, the first thing was I was lucky enough to know an angel investor, a Mr. Eduardo Mundira, who's still one of our big supporters, major investor in the company.
Love that.
And I'd met him some months before, and I think we'd gotten along quite well. And so I remember I sat down, like this is how into this he was. I sat down with him on Christmas Eve in a club in London, and we basically architected out together what the business model would be, because we knew, if had we been in the West Coast, maybe it would have been possible to go out to one of the big name guys and say, we have this awesome new scientific advance, give me 50 million and we'll go make a product. But being in the UK ecosystem, that didn't seem very viable. The capital is just not there to do that kind of thing, and the appetite for risk is not the same. So we knew we had to kind of slow roll this and find a way of making money early in order to get UK and European VCs interested before trying to make the jump to the US. Because there's a total unknown in the US. I mean, yeah, that's a non-starter, I think. And so
Sure.
we decided early on that what we would try to do is, rather than going straight to a product in the sense of something that an end user could use, we would slightly spread bet. We'd say, okay, we'll stay as a platform. We make holographic display possible. We create the software architecture, and we design the holographic systems at the level of like the display and the illumination, that kind of thing. But instead of trying to make a product, we'll license it to product companies so they can integrate it with their existing product roadmaps. And we had a long, hard think about what those target customers could be in the early days, because there were several restrictions. Like the thing we wanted to do, of course, was approach a TV company like a Samsung or a BOE or someone and say,
Sure.
let's go make a massive holographic display. But it's very difficult. Like these guys live on very tiny margins.
Right.
People are not making a lot of money selling TVs, or at least not per TV. Like the supply chain for that is very mature, and so introducing innovation into that is risky for them and not something they're going to do without some market validation in place. So that left us looking at, okay, what are the emerging technologies where our holographic display adds value, where there's a lot of money currently being poured in because it's maybe a still undefined area. And so we settled on two primary use cases. And neither of them are what I imagined in the first instance, but they are still very much the drivers of the revenue today. And they are XR and automotive head-up display. So
I
yeah,
like that.
so there's good reasons for this. So I'll start with automotive. So you might wonder, why do I need holograms in a car? Well, so the focus here is very much your head-up display. So you want to be able to
Sure.
see images through your windshield to highlight objects in the road, or give you Google Maps that appears to be like on the road and that kind of thing. And you may have even have driven a car with a head-up display today, but it's a bit of a disappointing experience. Like typically a HUD today will just show you maybe your speed or some dashboard information in the windshield. It's very basic.
Right.
And critically, it only shows it at a single fixed distance. So as you look at it, yeah, sure, the information's now in the windshield, but it's not adding very much. It's not really augmenting the world. It's just showing the same information slightly higher. So it's better than a dashboard, but not substantially. But what I think people have in their mind, certainly what the OEMs have in their mind, is that they have this fully augmented windshield kind of concept. But for that, you need a 3D display, because your virtual images have to match up with a 3D world. That's just not possible with 2D display. So this is the first application. Now, it also comes with a huge manufacturing bonus that we didn't know about when we started. But it turns out every head-up display currently made has to be made for a specific model of car, because every model of car has a different shaped windshield. And so when you project onto that windshield, that curvature will distort the image. So you need to build additional optics onto your head-up display to account for that curvature. And that's a real problem, right? Because every car has a different shaped windshield.
Right.
So every car needs its own manufacturing line for its head-up display, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, there's no scale there.
Exactly. And this is partially why HUD has failed to really get beyond just luxury cars. It's because, it's fine to do for your top-end Cadillac, but, something mid-range or low-range, you're not going to bother setting up that assembly line.
Right.
So an added advantage that we found when working with tier ones was that the holographic display allows us to calculate that windshield distortion and account for it in the hologram. So we can modify with just a software calibration between different cars. So you can make the same HUD for every model.
That's amazing.
And it turns out that's the main driver. Like, of course, the OEMs love it's 3D, it gives a better customer experience. But what they like more than that is, it's cheaper. And we can use the same tooling across all our factories. And that turns out to be a way more important thing than
that's millions of dollars in changes they don't have to make.
Exactly. And it means, and it doesn't matter what new car they come out with in the future, or if windshields change drastically, but forevermore, HUDs can just be adapted to whatever they go into with a simple software config. So that's one of our markets, that's been very successful. We have we have a couple of products coming out within the next 2 years. So automotive is slow. We started our
Of course.
projects with these guys back in like 2020, and it's still like another year until we see the product emerge. But I will say this: they are very good at paying their bills. When automotives get their teeth into something, and they really go for it. They are a bit like uh, like an oil tanker in that respect, because they're so locked into certain manufacturing timescales. They of course have to set this stuff years in advance, and once they've seen a
Right.
roadmap, unless something drastic happens, they're not going to steer away. So yeah, if you can get in, then you've got a good earner for a long time, which is nice.
That's great. And it's such a good use case for them. And I can't believe they're going slow. And maybe for them, it's not slow.
It's not,
To us, it feels slow because tech goes so fast. But, to be the first company to roll that out on their entire line, top to bottom, or at least on, the top and mid, I mean, that would really be a game changer. And now every other automotive company is playing catch up, and you're demonstrating that you're number one.
yeah,
And
exactly.
you're the one to beat, the innovators.
Yes, and handily, because of our model where we're supplying software and reference designs, we managed to take a step back from things like automotive standards, because that's an entire nightmare that we'd rather avoid, of having to get into the world of having to do all the testing and validation. This we leave to the tier ones, and because we sell to the tier ones, they literally want to sell to every auto OEM they can. So by using them as the sales channel, we only have to work with one major customer, and you get access to the whole market. So yeah, it's a nice model.
That's brilliant.
Well, okay. The downside, just in case people are interested, because obviously there's no free lunch, you do get a smaller cut of the pie, because
Sure.
the tier one will sell their HUD to the OEM for say $1,000. The OEM, like if you go on the BMW website and you select a HUD as an optional extra, it'd be like $2,500. So we're not getting a cut of the $2,500. We're only getting a cut of the 1,000 that the tier one sold onto. But ideally, in this case, at least we sell to multiple OEMs, so we make it up on the scale rather than on the individual unit.
And you don't have the cost of sales and having to build the team and educate them and go in and deal with the sales cycles and hope that there's a deal 2 years in the future, and somebody else deals with all that.
Correct. Yeah. So I can keep my sales and marketing really tight, just a few people, rather than having to have like a dedicated automotive sales team. Because I've seen in the tier ones we work with, they have literally dozens of people per customer tied to those accounts permanently. That is a lot of heavy lifting, and that's not the job of a startup if you can avoid it.
Yeah, it's hard to break into as well. I mean, if you're not already in, it's hard to get in from the outside. So it's really, really smart in doing that and leveraging the relationships that exist and the supply chain that's already there.
Thanks. So that's our automotive story. So the other one I mentioned is in XR. Now, we had expected XR to be rather faster than the automotive, but it looks like it's going to arrive at about the same time. So I say XR because I include VR and AR in the same bucket. What one should not. They are very different, both in technology, application, and adoption. But they usually get clumped under one big umbrella.
Sure.
So we have been working on a new VR system with a company. There are only so many, so you can take your pick of the major 3 or 4. But essentially, the problem for VR is, and I'm sure if you've used VR, you'll experience this. People after playing VR for 30 to 40 minutes start to feel quite nauseated or can get headaches. It's generally uncomfortable.
There's a barrier to using it for an extended period of time.
Exactly.
And that's you have to have the headset.
Yeah, you have to have the headset, and the headset makes people feel ill if you use it for any time. And that's a real problem, right? Because I think when people thought VR originally, they were thinking, this is the ultimate immersive gaming. I can stay immersed for hours. I can play in my fantasy land for as long as I like, and it's something way better than just having a computer screen in front of me. But it hasn't worked out that way because you can't currently play long form games. It's still the most popular VR game is Beat Saber, which is fun. Like, don't get me wrong, like Beat Saber. But the reason it's successful is because it's literally a 10-minute experience. You do a couple of songs, you have some fun, you take it off before that nauseating effect builds up. And
Makes
people
sense.
used to think of the nausea effect. Well, the reasons stated for this were things like latency and lag and missing horizon and all these kinds of things. And these may have been effects in the past that influenced this nauseating effect, but no longer. Like a modern day VR set is really fast. The refresh rate of the display is very high. You're not getting any lag anymore. That's not the issue.
Right.
It turns out the issue is way more intrinsic. So the nauseating feeling you get from VR is actually the same nauseating feeling people will get in 3D cinema or when you're using 3D TV. And there, there's no lag or anything there, but you still feel kind of rubbish after a while. And it's because of something called the divergence accommodation conflict, which is a very fancy way of saying any VR system or 3D TV or any of these kinds of systems use stereoscopic display. Very simple idea. You give your left eye one image, you give your right eye a slightly different image that are slightly offset, and your brain kind of muddles out a 3D image from the two offset images. But the two images are fundamentally two-dimensional, so there's no depth to the scene. So by depth, I mean, if you focus at anything around you and you bring it sharp,
right.
you'll notice that things behind go kind of fuzzy. If you focus at distance, things near go kind of fuzzy. That's your eye literally squeezing the lens in your eye to focus on things. But that effect is completely absent from any stereo display, including VR. Everything in a VR set is always at a fixed focus. So you're kind of making your eyes focus at a fixed plane, but tricking them with the stereo images to make you think that things are closer or further away. Now, you can't simulate this in real life. You can't make your eyes like focus on the finger but look behind it. That's not an effect you can do. But VR and other systems like this force that behavior. And that's a real issue. Your brain doesn't like it. And you don't notice it instantly.
Seems like it'd be exhausting.
Yeah, it does. And there are studies about how this is very fatiguing. And I'll be careful when I say this, but like it has been suggested, though I don't think confirmed, that the reason major companies are not pitching VR sets at kids is because there is a mild concern that if you have kids immersed in VR for a long time, you may screw up their eyes because, of course, they're focusing completely wrong for hours on end. Now, this is where 3D display comes in. If you have a true 3D display, well, a true 3D display contains all these focus cues perfectly. So your stereo cue and your focus cues align, and it's like looking at the real world. So it's the next level up in VR. So it's not quite holograms everywhere in the room with you yet, but at least it is a way of getting VR to a point where it's acceptable for long-term play and it's not damaging to your eyes in any sense. This is of significant interest to some of the major tech companies that are doing this. And you'll have seen, for example, Meta have released multiple prototypes of systems that try to solve this problem using, like lenses that change shape depending on where you're looking, or, other increasingly complex hardware solutions to try and get around this. But none of them have made it to market. All of them have been like too heavy or require too much power, or a plethora of really difficult problems. They solved the one thing they were looking to solve, but in doing so created a bunch of others.
More.
And so none of these have made it to product. So and this goes for Apple Vision Pro as well. Like every VR system has this problem. This is not a solved thing in the industry today. And I think we are unique in that we have that solution, and hopefully with not too much more work, we'll have a new VR system coming out that will solve this once and for all. And I think at that point, it won't be an optional thing. Everyone will have to adopt it, because who is ever going to buy the VR set that makes you ill?
Of course. And I think that's one of the things that's really unique about what you're doing is you don't have that barrier between the person and the image. Or you don't have just the additional friction of you have to wear the headset, or you have to, like 3D, you have to wear the glasses. So it's right there with you, and you can go around it. It's true 3D.
Yeah.
I mean, you can stick your hand in it. You can maybe not interact with it.
Oh, definitely can. So
can you?
Well, this actually brings me on to our latest work. So we've been doing all the AR VR work as well as the HUD work, but really what we want to get into and what the ultimate goal of the company was, as I say, you want to do away with a headset, or you want to do away with a windshield. You don't want bits of glass in between you and the image. You want to have it free floating in the room with you. And recently we have been, I guess, starting to collaborate with some major real estate companies who want to make like building-sized holographic displays, like something that
That would be amazing.
epic scale, where you could cover the entire side or the interior of a building in a holographic display to be able to create huge life-size holograms or even bigger in the space with you. And holography is basically the technology we've developed is literally the only technology that can ever achieve that kind of vision. It's not like there's some other method that could get there. This is it. If the human race is going to have access to this idea of having virtual images floating in the world around us without the need for headwear, it's this or nothing. So that's
Wow.
we're early into that. It's starting to pick up momentum. We obviously get quite a lot of interest on that front. It wasn't an area we wanted to attack because, as I said, we needed to establish our technology within some applications, and the XR stuff and the HUD stuff has done that for us. Now we have customer references, so now we have a bit of credibility. We can go back to these big display manufacturers and say,
Sure.
"Look, I know 5 years ago this is unproven tech and you couldn't do anything with it, but now we've got in a couple of applications. It's real, it works. These big tech companies, these big Silicon Valley and Japanese tech companies say it works. Okay, now we can start looking at this next evolution of display."
That's awesome. I can't believe that you haven't had, like, maybe you have and just not saying it, but just ridiculous offers for the company or the technology, because it really is. It has the potential to change reality as we know it, to change the way that we interact with displays, the way we communicate, the way we do Zoom meetings and podcasts. I mean, we could be sitting in a room together as holographs,
Yeah,
having a conversation.
Yeah, that is the dream, and we're just not very far away from that. We are ideally, as contingent on having a contract signed quite soon, going to be creating a large, like, room scale holographic display, which could do exactly that. And that's going to start with a couple of installations first, but ideally we're able to get the cost down to make it more commercially available, such that this can be your living room. Like, you won't be passively watching a TV anymore in the corner of the room or on the wall. The wall itself will be a display. You'll sit inside the TV show. And like you can get up and walk around the actors. You can see things from all perspectives. But video conferencing as well. Yeah, you want to see your sister or your spouse who's maybe away on a business trip. Well, you can have them as a holographic image right there in front of you, and totally interactive.
Wow.
All this becomes possible now. In terms of the offers, well, so I'd say that well, let's say about that. We certainly work with some of the bigger names.
Sure.
That's definitely true. And we have slow rolled it a bit, by going through these applications. So getting to these kind of, world changing applications, I think is the next step. And I do expect a bit of increase in interest then. But as I'm sure you're aware, the ecosystem does run on trends. And
Sure.
and I would say, for us, we've not yet been kind of like the thing that's in vogue at the moment, right? We've seen like crypto, and then there was a bit of AR and VR hype, and then now it's AI. Like we've never neatly fit within one of these categories, either for investment or within the the big roadmap stuff for the major tech companies. I'm hoping we change that now, because we are unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you view it, we're kind of having to drive our own path here and create the category. We don't neatly fit into anyone's current roadmap, because who would have roadmapped for this? I think, like, most people, even in these companies, don't know this is possible yet. So they definitely haven't written it down as a thing that they need to, have acquired or invest in. So every company that we meet is always surprised that this exists. And then then there's several months worth of credibility building and demos and proving to them that no, it's not fake and it's genuine, and having to describe how it works and how it scales and all these kinds of things. But it takes time.
Sure. What if a leadership book and a Netflix drama had a baby? That is The Captain's Keys, Storms, Emotional Wreckage, and a surprisingly practical leadership system that one CEO called the owner's manual and never got for 20 years of leadership. Here is the brutal truth. You're probably drowning in LinkedIn connections while starving for real relationships. I hear it all the time. Most leaders are exhausted from playing the lone hero, and it's killing both your results and your sanity. The Captain's Keys reveals a new leadership framework, the Stability Matrix, 4 specific relationships that prevent burnout while multiplying your impact. And this isn't just theory. It's a system that I've used to scale companies and taught over 1,000 executive leaders. So grab your copy today at thecaptainskeys.com, Amazon, or choose your own adventure, print, ebook, or audio. Stop drowning alone and build your stability matrix. It is one of those things that it's like, can this possibly be real?
Yeah.
We've seen it in movies and we've seen it faked for a long time.
Yeah.
And for that to actually be here is pretty incredible.
Yeah. And like going back to my first experience, like, when I saw that little red image the first time, it's like my reaction was, yeah, I didn't know we could do this. That's not a thing that I thought the human race had achieved yet. So I can very much sympathize with those who are, looking at our demos and being like, oh, like, okay, I can see a floating butterfly right here in the room with me. They're like swiping at it, try to catch me out, try to like look for the glass, and I was like, no, it's there. Like you can see it with your own eyes, and I'll still have people be like, nah, how are you doing this? Do you actually just have a real butterfly? And then I have to like show them a bunch of images. And in fact, even to the point, we created quite a nice little demo in our office in Palo Alto, where in order to convince people that I wasn't faking it, we hooked up an LLM so I could on the fly I could get them to say some nonsense like I'd be like, oh, but give me a hologram you want to see, and they'd give me like, oh, I want to see the flying spaghetti monster driving a Ferrari or something. And I'd type that in, and then it would generate a hologram of whatever nonsense they'd said, and I'd be like, look, I couldn't have predicted that. So.
Oh my gosh, that is such a great use case because that is as real time as it gets.
Yeah. That was quite fun, and we did it kind of as a little bit of a puff piece, as like, well, AI is cool right now, we should have some integration. But yeah, I actually, when I was thinking about it, I thought actually, that is one of the use cases. The tie-in with AI is kind of critical.
Yeah.
Because AI currently is just accessed through text prompts. That's cool, and it's very good for software developers, that's the dominant use case. But for the average consumer, they want something way more intuitive. They want to be able to see the AI within the world they live in. And how better are we going to represent that than being able to literally cast virtual images into the world so they can see annotations or guidance or whatever they need with their AI, and the only real way to do that is with holograms.
It's some really good tie-ins with AI and being able to, like, I talked to it today on a regular basis, but be able to actually see it and interact with it. Yeah, that's a different level. I mean, TV shows and media, you can actually be part of the show, or movies.
Yeah.
You're part of the experience, and depending on where you are physically, you're seeing it different.
Yeah.
The interactions can be different. It can be experienced differently.
Yeah.
Concerts. Imagine, you can be on stage.
Yeah.
At a concert. You're not watching it, you're part of it. I mean, there's just so much that can be done with something like that. It's very, very cool.
Yeah. No, in fact, someone did even pitch this at me a few weeks ago they wanted to create a big holographic display in Hollywood where you could get on, be on band, be in the band essentially. You could grab your guitar and you could be playing with the band. That's their holographically. And I was like, yeah, but yeah, and I think it's a great point about like the TV shows and movies. Right now, as I say, we passively watch things. We're not really involved. Like, yeah, it goes beyond just being able to see from different perspectives. With enough AI in there, you could have the characters react to your presence. They could adapt depending on what you're doing. I mean, this seems already possible with LLMs where they are.
Yeah.
And then the TV show, you could have a sort of guiding script that the direction it needs to go, but the details could all be generated on the fly, and then they could adapt around you depending on your location within the room or things that you look at or any number of parameters. And then then every TV show will be a bit more like a video game, which
right,
depending on your preference, that might be a bit much. That might be a lot of work, but it would certainly make people less sedentary when watching TV, which might be useful.
Without a doubt. From a founder perspective, this is a very new area, and one, I love that you brought it to market. You found some use cases. Didn't go out and just here's how we're going to change the world and we're going to raise $500 million to do it. but actually prove the technology in the real world, which I think is awesome. But you've really kind of had to rewrite the playbook for how this comes to market. How did you think about that in the go-to-market function and kind of bringing it to life?
Yeah. So in terms of the go-to-market, we were always going to struggle with having enough funds on hand to be able to do all the hardware ourselves. So
Sure.
we're able to make prototypes. We'll buy parts, off the shelf parts, in order to create prototypes, but we won't do very much custom work. And of course, most products require a fair degree of customization to get to market. So our model has always been work with, in automotive, with the tier ones, work with big tech that have big enough in-house R&D facilities to be able to customize things themselves, or with ODMs who are then supplying the other OEMs that don't have the in-house facility. So by going through these guys, it's very much as what I was describing the tier ones. You access a much wider pool of potential customers. You work with tier one, the ODM. They license the technology. We work with them for the period of product development. So I would say it is currently still quite hands-on. So we have, with our current automotive customers especially, we've got like 2 weekly calls with them every week in order to, discuss the project, make sure that the technology is being developed along the right direction, and so forth. So it is quite hands-on. We'll do software customizations, update designs as we go to suit their purposes, but eventually they handle all the supply chain stuff, all the hardware build, miniaturization. That's a big problem, right? Miniaturization is something that exists in the world. There are lots of very good factories in the world that can take, a relatively bulky system and can design it so that it can be, it's tiny, like with a few, that's
right.
That is the thing people know how to do. And that's the thing we avoid, because that is a known thing. No one should pay us to go and miniaturize their system, because there are many people who are capable of that. So we stop at that point. We license technology into these ODMs and the tier ones. They then worry about, the actual system requirements and how small to make it, how to do the electronics and the mechanics and so forth. And so we license for these guys along two directions. So we have a hardware license, which enables them to use our IP in order to design whatever it is they're making, whether it's a HUD or an XR module or something like that. But there's also a software subscription element as well. So I guess the upside for us is that the hardware is basically useless without the software. Without the algorithms that drive the display, that tell it how to compute the hologram, the hardware itself is an inert, useless brick. And this is good for us because it means we're always protected, because the worry with any pure hardware IP sale is, well, once you've sold it, you've kind of lost control of it. Now you're in the cycle of, how do I audit their usage of this? How many units have they built? Have they paid us for all the units and all that kind of nightmare? Well, we do have that to some degree, but we also have the added guarantee that, well, we know how many software licenses we handed out, and they won't be able to run anything without the software. And the software can be charged on a subscription basis, so we get annual recurring revenue rather than just a one-off hardware sale. So it tends to be that we have a one-off hardware royalty, so a per unit device royalty, plus a software subscription on top that allows them to actually drive it. And that means we get two revenue streams just from the hardware manufacturer. The second go-to-market is on the content side. So one might wonder, fairly, cool, you've got a new display technology, but isn't that kind of a problem? Because now you need a ton of new content just for that display technology. How is a startup ever going to, have content studios and all the things required in order to create that ecosystem? And that would be a valid point. So we also worried about this in the early days. So we developed plugins to things like game engines, like Unity, Unreal, as well as like 3D movies and 3D cameras, so we could extract the data already generated by these existing platforms and convert it under the hood to our holographic display format. So we've basically done that for everybody. You can use existing content natively without having to worry about all that. So you can extract the data from existing devices and existing platforms, and there you go. Your content problem solved. But it also gives us an opportunity because, of course, now we can license the content element onto the game
Sure.
developers and the movie studios and so forth. So they just have to use our plugin to their Unity or their Unreal project, and then they're now hologram ready. So I like to think, when we've got the hardware base established, we'll do very well in terms of revenue. But when we start driving that content side, well, there's a lot more content in the world than there are pieces of hardware. So we should do multiples on revenue when we start getting into the content workflow.
Oh, without a doubt. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I mean, just the licensing model, again, you've avoided a lot of the most difficult parts of going to market and building solutions in licensing the tech and done that so well. It's kind of like the Intel Inside model, except there's a subscription on top of that as well.
Yeah.
You're doing, you are the NVIDIA, what they're doing with AI. I mean, that's what you are for holograms, holographic images. I mean, that's just a great model.
Thanks. That is the analogy I like to draw, but I'm going to undercut myself here, and just because, again, people might think, well, if it's so easy, why doesn't everyone do this? And so there are drawbacks that one should be aware of, I guess. And the principal one is you don't have total control over your own destiny. You are somewhat beholden to the tier one or the OEM, because eventually it's their product roadmap, not your own. And I do sometimes get a bit envious of product companies that can lay down a roadmap and say, we're going to build a thing on this date, we're going to launch it on that date, and regardless of what happens, we'll have a product and it's there. Whereas quite a few times in our development cycle, the company we're working with went a different way on budget. They cut our budget to slow the project. It slows the release date. And we're sitting there being like, well, that's frustrating. I guess we'll go and find somebody else in the meantime while you guys get your act together. That lack of control it can be a bit frustrating. I guess the answer to it is always, we'll have enough of them in the pipeline so you can chop and change in case somebody changes their mind. And also it's a bit more of an uphill struggle on getting the deals in the first place. So your sales cycle is way longer, because I don't literally have a product I can show people. I can't say, here's a polished, finished head-up display or a polished, finished holographic TV or anything like this. Because that's the thing we expect them to build. If we had already built it, well, we wouldn't need them anymore.
Right.
But it means that we have to enter kind of with the R&D teams and explain the concept and show them the demos that we have, which are often more kind of lab-based. And so there's a lot of building confidence to get to the point where they go, okay, we understand it well enough, and convince them that they're not taking some huge risk, that this is something that can be designed in with their current skill set. And that can be a long process. So yeah, licensing, I like it as a model because for all the reasons you mentioned, but it will probably take longer than you think, probably take longer than making your own product. And even when you get the deal, I'm afraid you don't have control over whether it actually makes it to the market. And even then, you have no control over how the OEM or the customer will do the marketing. I mean, they may just be very bad at that, and your product might fail for no fault of your own. So okay, so there we go. Sorry, I just undercut my own business model, but I think it's one should know before throwing your lot in with licensing that there are a couple of downsides.
Of course, I think that's true with every model. But I think early on, especially, partnerships and licensing is a great way to do it. You can always build your own product.
Yeah.
If you were going to do that, what would you build? Have you thought about that? If money were no object and I could build anything in the world with this technology, what would it be?
The holodeck. So.
Oh yes, if I'm in.
Yeah. Like if people don't get the Star Trek reference, the idea is it's a room that's completely paneled up in displays for the ultimate immersive experience. Like there are companies who do like these kind of like moving floor things for VR, where you can walk as much as you want, but you don't really move very much.
Free roam VR.
Yeah, that's the guys. So you could have that kind of thing in there, so you could move around a lot and you get the full experience. But yeah, a massive room where you could be completely immersed. You don't need to wear a headset or anything clunky. All the holograms can be completely interactive. Yeah, that's the thing. And I think the entertainment possibilities are endless, obviously.
Yes.
But for things like, you also got to imagine that for training as well, like industrial training, military training, these would be very useful. tools to have. So yeah, if money was no object, we'd go build the holodeck, and I'd probably immediately take it to like aviation companies or factories and say, look,
That's
would you
great.
like a very, very, very safe training environment where you can replicate your factory floor or whatever it is to the minutest detail, but no one can get hurt because these things are just made of light. I think that would be worth quite a lot to a lot of companies who have to spend a lot on
Yes.
training and have to worry about safety measures and all these kinds of things before letting people loose in the environments. And then once we had established that and managed to get to some scale such that we could get the cost down, then I think high-end consumer would be the next place. Maybe starting with like holodeck arcades in some sense, having installations that people could go to, have the experience before that propagates eventually into the home. But that would be the I think that would be the dream. I don't know who wouldn't want a holodeck, but maybe that's just my own nerdy perspective.
Yeah, sign me up. I'm in. What's been the biggest leadership challenge for you as a CEO of a company that's at the edge of science and technology?
Leadership challenge. I think I've had it quite easy. I'd just say my team is very good, and they've been relatively gentle on me. I'd say we raised around in 2021. When everybody did, when money was basically free, and it was a reasonable sized round as well. And I think the fashion at the time was very much, oh, you've raised money, go scale like crazy.
Right.
And of course we followed suit. I think, in hindsight, made quite a big error of, hiring a bunch of salespeople, marketing people, operational people that now I look back, we really didn't need. The technology was not at a point where we could really go and do those kinds of sales, or where it was not a point where I could hand off sales to somebody else, like an experienced salesperson. Really,
Makes sense.
the sales still had to be led by me and by the other technical founders. And yeah, there was a big push at the time of, oh, you've got money, go big. And really, I wish I had reined that in, not spent the money, actually invested it, in fact, doubled down on just having more engineers, and and let the kind of the ops and sales and marketing thing grow a bit more organically rather than try to force it. So yeah, I think in terms of leadership challenge, there was I actually a bit of a personal failure rather than a challenge was not recognizing that big growth phase was not there yet for us. We should have held back. We should have conserved the cash. We should have just sat on it, had hired more engineers, accumulated more projects and more product development roadmap things via like my efforts rather than trying to devolve that to a sales team. So yeah, no. So the challenge that came with this, of course, was a year or two down the line when I had come to this epiphany and gone, oh my God, I've wasted a ton of cash and it hasn't really returned any value, was of course then I had to have the awkward conversations with the various people I'd hired saying, oh, I'm sorry, this is not going to work out, and we're gonna have to downsize because the company's grown to a point where I'm no longer confident everyone is doing something useful. So
right.
And that could be quite brutal. And that was really having come from academia, not really come from a business background, it was my first real experience of having to do that, and that was grim. So felt like quite
It's
the bad
really hard. A lot of other founders I think can relate to that, especially if they raised in 21.
Yeah.
I mean, due diligence was done with an Etch-a-Sketch and an abacus. I mean, it was unreal.
Yeah.
Some of the things that happened that year. But here we are.
Yeah, and just like again, it was at the end of the day, it was my choice. And
sure.
in hindsight, I should have seen better. But I do remember the culture at the time being very much, oh, you've raised, it's time to go higher. Let's get lots of people in the door. And everyone around me was doing it. And there was very much the thing of, oh, are we getting left behind? I haven't scaled a sales team. And the pressure coming from like internal investors and new investors was, oh, you guys should have all these things in place, and like this should all look way more professional and all these kinds of things. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll go and hire a bunch of people to do all that. And then you realize, God, like, what did that actually get me? It was a
Right.
vanity metric, and that's
Right.
yeah, and yeah. So,
That's tough.
yeah, so and it is, and yeah, it's never nice to have to let go of people who are blameless in this. They were doing their best, but you have to let them go because you realize, I was entirely entirely hired based on some ridiculous metric that didn't matter, and yeah, they end up being the victims of that. So yeah, lessons learned.
It's very relatable. Well, you have an upcoming warehouse wall holographic display. I think it's going to be a pretty jaw-dropping demo. Do you want to talk about that, or do you keep that under wraps for a little while longer?
It's something I want everyone to know about. Yeah, no, this is part of our moving towards the holodeck thing. So I mentioned earlier that we wanted to do these projects with real estate firms who want to do large architectural exhibits, and
right.
And those guys, yeah, to be fair to your typical real estate developer, it's probably not a guy who has spent a lot of time thinking about or researching optics or display. So they need to see something concrete. They need to have the wow moment. I can't really take them into our lab in Cambridge and show them, some small display on a bench and say, trust me, it gets big later. So our plan is, well, we're raising a new round of financing right now that will unlock our ability to go and make something on a truly epic scale. So yeah, we want to build a 5 by 5 meter hollow wall, which will be literally the most impressive display ever made by humanity. It will be a holographic display in the way you think. So the wall will, sit 10, 20 meters away, and it will project large scale holographic images into the world in front of the wall.
That's awesome.
That you can reach out and interact with. And this will be, of course, our key demo. We're going to show that to pretty much anyone that I can persuade to come and see it. And I've jokingly said to our board a couple of times, the minute we switch that thing on, and I get a bunch of VCs lined up to walk by it, I think we're going to be worth $1 billion plus the next day.
Easily.
Yeah, this will be something on a different scale from what has ever been done before, and it's something, I guess, even a year ago we weren't sure ourselves was practical yet, because we'd kind of got into our heads that the power scaling and the number of pixels that you would require within a display like that would be of a different order than what was achievable in manufacturing. And to be fair, there have been a couple of companies that have sprung up in the last few years which are trying to attack that manufacturing problem, like trying to get displays with ever smaller and smaller pixels so you get much higher density to make better holographic displays. But we hit in a bit of a moment, a bit of a huge moment for us just this year, where we realized actually we don't need all that. We could do this very large holographic display just using off the shelf LCD panels, like the things that you're looking at amazing. Right now. And that was a huge moment as we were like, and it's been like several months of checking, like being Cambridge academics, we're like, that's an amazing idea. We didn't run out to do it immediately. Then followed months of simulations to be like, that can't be right. This can't, surely not. And no, it's entirely right. It works. I've got a basic demo sitting in our lab in the office, and it just works. It doesn't require any new manufacturing processes. It doesn't require new displays of any kind. It's using liquid crystal displays of the type you're probably looking at right now. Because our demo in the lab right now, we just took a display out of a laptop and used that, and it just works. And from then on, we've been like, well, okay, then the problem of scaling is just a function of how many of these can we buy and tile up into a massive array. It's just a money problem now. It's money and time. The science is done. And with this idea, we can create arbitrarily large displays. It's just a case of how many of them you want to patch together. And with that knowledge, cool. Like, yeah, our holodecks in reach, our holowalls in reach. We could, it's just a case of how much someone wants to pay and for how big they want to get it.
That's amazing. And it really, that alone puts it in reach of real estate people, of buildings, of gamers, it really, the entire market.
Yeah.
The barrier to entry is now, fairly low because you can do it with technology that exists.
Yeah. And that really is the key, because one of the things we fight against, when I mentioned the long sales cycle, this is a technology that is kind of known. Like anyone who's done a physics degree, sorry, say known, among physicists, everyone who's done a physics degree knows about holography, because it's something that's taught in an undergraduate level, at least in principle, right? So a lot of the guys we talk to in the big tech companies know about this stuff, but they also know, I say know in inverted commas, that it requires, a type of display that doesn't really exist yet, and very precise lasers, and all these kinds of things that sound very expensive and don't exist. And a large part of what we've done, I guess, after that initial algorithmic breakthrough was, how do we make this technology more palatable to the market? And really what that means is, how can we make sure this works on things that are already mass produced and inexpensive? Because eventually that's what matters to these people. It's not how cool it is. It's how cool it is at what cost. And if I could only pitch a technology that would be like the ultimate user experience, but every installation will cost $100 million, well, it's still not a product. It's still not a business.
Right.
So but the work we've done in the background over the last few years to make this technology compatible with off-the-shelf components has meant that this is, it's within touching distance of the market, rather than being a nice concept within a lab.
Well, where can people learn more about VividQ and you online?
Well, there is the website, although the website probably does need a bit of an update to reflect some of these new things. So don't take everything there as gospel. But of course, I'm on LinkedIn. People are welcome to message me anytime. I will very happily answer any questions that people have. But yeah, we'll also be we'll be at some trade shows as well. So we always feature at the SPIE Photonics West conference that happens in San Francisco, which I believe is in February next year. But yeah, and we're based in Cambridge in the UK mostly. So if anyone is in the area, just drop me a message, drop by, come look at some holograms. And we also have an office in Palo Alto in the Bay Area. So I'm over there quite regularly. So again, people can always drop me a message. I'd be happy to show them some holograms in that office as well.
And that's awesome. It has been such a great conversation. Huge value. I love what you're building. I can't wait to see it continue to mature and then, start showing up everywhere.
Yeah.
So
likewise.
That's so good. Darren, thank you for being on SaaS Fuel.
Oh, thanks so much. That was great fun.
Thanks again, Darren, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Darren and about VividQ and the amazing things they're doing, including like building a real life holodeck, at vividq.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. It's at Champion Leadership. We have full video episodes there for you, trainings, outtakes, shorts, lots of tools and tips over there for you. Thought leaders share. Share this episode with someone who thinks quiet quitting just means turning off Slack notifications after 6 p.m. Everyone who shares this week gets a meditation app that only unlocks if your cortisol levels spike from unread DMs. So namaste or else. What happens when a 6-time founder turns his hard-won startup lessons into a new AI framework for growth? Well, our next guest, Anthony Franco, an entrepreneur, AI strategist, and the co-author of AI First Principles and the Wiser Method, will share how to grow smarter, automate strategically, and build toward a successful exit without losing your soul in the process. Absolutely love this episode. Completely aligned with what Anthony is talking about here. And then what if your feature rollouts could move faster and safer even as your team scales? Eagle Ostos, co-founder and CEO of Unleash, is leading the charge with Feature Ops, a new frontier in software development that gives teams a critical safety net in today's high-velocity, AI-integrated landscape. It's such a good episode. So I will see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.